Okay, let's just jump right in because this story is wild. We're talking about a sitting head of state captured by the United States military in a stunning overnight raid. It sounds like a Hollywood script, but it's very, very real, and we're going to break it all down.
In this quote, it really puts everything into perspective. I mean, think about that. We have not seen a military operation that targets a national leader like this since the peak of the Cold War. It's a chilling comparison that tells you just how big of a deal this is. So here it is, the bottom line. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, was taken from the capital city of Caracas. He's now in the United States, in custody, set to face American justice. Just an absolutely unbelievable turn of events.
So, the big question is, how did we get here? How did this even happen? What are the charges? And how on earth does a sitting president end up in a jail cell in New York City? Let's get into it.
Well, it all goes back to a federal indictment filed in Manhattan. According to U.S. officials, President Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, were hit with some really serious charges. We're talking drug trafficking, weapons charges, and even narco-terrorism, which is basically the accusation that they were using the drug trade to fund terror.
And, this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment thing. The U.S. had been building pressure for a long time. In fact, they'd previously offered a massive $50 million reward for any information that could lead to his arrest.
And his journey from the presidential palace to a New York jail cell, wow, it was a whole production. First, he's captured in Caracas. Then he's flown to a U.S. warship out in the Caribbean. From there, it's off to Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, before finally landing in New York and getting a helicopter ride right into Manhattan.
But the how of all this, that's the truly incredible part. How did they pull this off? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the raid itself, a mission that was planned out to the very last detail.
Mission had a name, Operation Absolute Resolve, and this was a true Black Ops mission. It came after months and months of planning, gathering intelligence, and running rehearsals. It was so secret, get this, that sources say even the U.S. Congress had no idea it was happening until it was already going down.
And when we talk about the scale of this thing, it is just mind-boggling. We're talking more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighter jets, spy planes. All of them were in the air that night to provide support and cover for the team on the ground.
So here's how it unfolded, step by step. First, they cut the power, plunging huge parts of the city into total darkness. Next came the airstrikes, to take out any military defenses. And with the path clear, the elite Delta Force team stormed the safe house. After a short firefight, they had Maduro and his wife, and they were airlifted out.
And get this, while all of this is happening, President Trump is at his Mar-a-Lago estate watching the whole thing on a live feed. His own words, like watching a television show, really capture just how surreal this whole thing was. It just gives you a sense of the stakes here, with the White House glued to every single second of it.
And the prep for this was, well, it was next level. They had spies on the ground, drones in the air, even a blowtorch ready for any steel doors. But the craziest part? They actually built a full-size replica of the safe house just to practice the raid over and over again.
So, from a purely military standpoint, the mission was a success. But on the ground in Venezuela, it was a completely different story. Maduro's capture instantly created this huge, dangerous power vacuum.
And this is where you see two totally different realities just clashing. You have President Trump in the U.S. saying the people of Venezuela are free again. But then you hear from someone actually in Caracas, and they're just describing total uncertainty, saying that nobody knows what's going to happen next.
So with Maduro gone, who's in charge? Well, that's where things got messy fast. Two people immediately tried to claim power. You had Maduro's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, who called it a kidnapping, and at the same time, opposition leader Maria Corina Machado declared that this was her hour of freedom. But for the average person in Caracas, freedom wasn't really the word of the day. It was more like confusion. The news was being censored. Radio stations were just playing music. Stores were closed, which meant long lines for food and medicine. And just this feeling of anxiety everywhere.
And, of course, this didn't just stay in Venezuela. The ripples from this event were felt all over the world instantly, and it raised some really big questions about America's role on the world stage.
Take Brazil's president, Lula da Silva. His reaction was immediate and pretty scathing. He called the whole thing an extremely dangerous precedent, and that feeling was shared all across Latin America. a region that has a very, very long and complicated history with U.S. intervention.
And it wasn't just him. Over in Colombia, they were worried about a humanitarian crisis. Mexico started to wonder if this meant the U.S. might take similar action elsewhere. And back home in Washington, there was pushback, with top Democrats calling the move reckless because it was done without any approval from Congress.
And this is where things get really complicated, and critics started asking some tough questions. They pointed out that while the U.S. was going after Maduro as a narco-terrorist, President Trump had just pardoned the former president of Honduras who'd been convicted in an American court for being, you guessed it, a narco-terrorist.
So what do we make of all this? What's the big takeaway? Well, as one reporter put it, it really feels like the world is at a turning point. This is about so much more than just one man. It leaves us with a huge question. Where are we all heading? And what kind of precedent does this set for the future? It's a lot to think about.